welcome to No Broken Legs. I am your host, Evan Belfiore, and to finish what we started with the Cleveland Browns is Jimmy Champ. Jimmy, how are you on this Sunday night?
Oh, bro, I'm feeling good. Ready to get into these picks and kind of officially lay our thoughts out there on how the season's going to go for the NFL.
Yeah, it is time for our over-unders for all 32 teams. Obviously, we did the Browns in our previous podcast. Check that out if you have not yet. We break down the whole team from the front office all the way down to the players on the field, give our picks for the Browns, which we will give again here. The Cleveland Browns over-under sits at 8.5, minus 162 on the over, plus 133 on the under, plus 180 to make the playoffs, minus 225 to miss the playoffs. Jimmy, what did you have the Cleveland Browns?
All right, so I'm going to be honest. I am not including the Browns in any of my parlays.
That's probably a wise move.
For the teams I think are going to make the playoffs. Now, as we talked about before, like I really sat down a couple weeks ago. I went through all the rosters, all the schedules, kind of projected out what I thought was going to happen. At that time, I absolutely believed the Cleveland Browns schedule would allow them to win 9 to 10 games and they would make the playoffs. I no longer believe that, but for the integrity of the No Broken Legs podcast, I'm going to stick with it. And on this recording, I'm going to take the over for the Cleveland Browns.
Ooh, you like them on the over now. I still like them on the under. I think this is a 7-8 win team.
I don't blame you.
I do think if they get to 9, though, they can make the playoffs. So I think that plus 180, yes. And the under at plus 133 is, that's kind of a juicy hedge. If you're that kind of player.
Yeah, none of the moves they've made make sense to me. It looked so many things that they just continue to say don't make sense. I don't trust it. But like I said, I'm gonna stick with my initial thought of the over because I just feel like there's a couple sections of the schedule where they could stack some wins if things are going well. And I'm told Kevin Stefanski is a 2-time coach of the year. So,
and I guess we can just briefly, they're not going to spend money. The whole Deshaun Watson thing is to free up cap space so that they can roll it over next year and move some of Watson's money over the next couple of years. So there isn't a big splash coming. I guess it does give them a little more flexibility this season. If they find a way to make a move in the margins, like less than $10 million, I think that would be something that they maybe can make. But this is mainly for next year and the years to come, which it makes me even more certain because it reminded me that this team continually puts themselves in a position where they're never able to use the full allotment of their cap in a given year because they either have to roll it over or it's accounted for. Like it's just... I feel like they're just not good enough. And I think that's part of the reason why, because as smart as they are with the cap, they're not actually all that smart.
Yeah, I mean, just in a few years, we're not going to have a quarterback or money to sign one. So it's going to be cool.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun for everybody. So the first team that we will get to outside of our hometown Cleveland Browns is the Baltimore Ravens. Their over-under currently sits at 10.5. Plus 125 on the under, minus 152 on the over. Yes to make the playoffs is minus 305. No is plus 240. To win the division, they're plus 150. They're the favorites. To win the conference, they're plus 400. And to win the Super Bowl, they're plus 1,000. Jimmy, will the Baltimore Ravens win more or fewer than 10.5 games?
I feel very firm about the Ravens at 10 wins, so I'm taking the under on the Ravens. I also think they missed the playoffs.
I was not expecting to hear you say the Baltimore Ravens would miss the playoffs.
That is, I just keep looking at it, and it's just what I feel. I don't think Derrick Henry does as much good as they think it will. I think the wide receiver core is still bad. I think they've just lost too many key pieces on defense as well. I think they're going to end the season. I think the last 5 games they're going to go 1-4 and they're going to miss the playoffs.
Wow. I have them under as well. I do have them in the playoffs, but I have them under. Their schedule's brutal. 11 just seems too high. I do think they have talent on offense. I think Zay Flowers is a really good player. I think Mark Andrews can still be a really good player. And with Lamar Jackson helping him out, if Derrick Henry's 80% of what he was, that should be a really good team. and they tend to dominate the NFC. So I think Jackson's unique abilities that they're not ready for over in the other conference help them in those games. But still, this seems like a 10-win team. I'm just still kind of stunned that you have them out of the playoffs. So that means I do not have Baltimore winning the division, and I obviously you don't either. Does that mean you have the Cincinnati Bengals winning the division? Their over/under sits at 10.5. They are plus 163 to not make the playoffs, minus 200 to make the playoffs. To win the division, they're plus 170. The conference is plus 650, and the Super Bowl is plus 1,000. Jimmy, do you have Cincinnati winning the division then?
Yeah, I think Cincinnati gets to 11 or 12 easily. I have them winning the division, so making the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have them winning the division. I have them at 11 or 12 wins. This is where being the last place team in this division really helps them because their out of conference games are the worst teams. So they get Washington, New England, and Tennessee are their three out of their three additional games on their schedule. I think they go 2-1, if not 3-0 in those games.
Yep. I think they go 3-0 in those games. I think that's the difference with them in Baltimore.
Yeah, I also think there's when Joe Burrow's healthy and Jamar Chase is healthy, this team wins games. It's just what they do.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about Burrow's new hairstyle. His interviews, he's talking with a little chip on his shoulder. I think he realizes that the injuries have kind of set him back a little bit and kind of got him out of that conversation. Is that next guy up? And I think he's going to be really, really good this year.
Our next team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their over/under sits at 8.5, plus 240 yes to make the playoffs, minus 305 no to make the playoffs. Division winner plus 800. Conference winner plus 3,500 and plus 7,000 to win the Super Bowl. Jimmy, they've never had a losing season with Mike Tomlin. Does that change this year?
Okay, so I want to preface this. I want to say I know it's weird because I beat him up so much as a head coach. If you're familiar with our pod here, I actually think Arthur Smith is going to do a very good job as the offensive coordinator of this team. I think they get to 9 wins. I think that's like their absolute cap on wins.
I have them under. This looks like an 8-win team. I think they're better than last year because their QB play can't possibly be worse, but I still think they only get to 7. The AFC West and NFC East, that feels like maybe 4 wins. Atlanta, Indy, and the Jets feels like maybe 1 or 2 more. I don't see how this team wins 3 games in the division, to be honest. I think their offensive line is almost as bad, if not worse, than the Browns.
And you look at that, so their schedule, they go Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals.
Yeah, like that could legitimately be 2 wins or less.
Yeah, I think we're going to find out a whole lot about, not that it should come to that, but if Mike Tomlin can split those games, it would be an incredible feat.
Yeah. Well, that's the AFC North. You have the Cincinnati Bengals winning. I have the Cincinnati Bengals winning. I have Baltimore in the playoffs, and it seems like you just have the Bengals in this division in the playoffs, Jimmy, or do you have the Browns making it?
I do have the Browns making it currently.
Wow. I'm just blown away. The flip-flop from our previous pod hurts. It hurts, Jimmy. It hurts.
Well, like I said, I wanted to stick true to what I did getting prepared, and just everything has been such a mess since the second preseason game. I do not feel the same way, but like I said, I'm going to stay true to it.
That's fair. Let's now move to the AFC East, where the Buffalo Bills have dominated for several years now. They had to come from behind last year to catch Miami in the last week of the season to win a division. This year, their over/under sits at 10.5. To make the playoffs, yes is minus 278, no is plus 220. Plus 120 to win the division, plus 475 to win the conference, plus 1,000 to win the Super Bowl. Jimmy, do the Buffalo Bills win more or fewer than 10.5 games?
I have the Bills at 9. I'm taking the under on the Bills.
Wow, so we disagree again. I'm taking the over. I feel like they lost some pieces, but I think this new offensive philosophy really works. Really works well for them. I think they're still going to be good on defense, even if they're not great. And I think more will be less for Allen. I think if they ask him to be Superman 30% of the time, they're going to get much better results than when they normally ask him to be Superman for 75% of the time. And this is also a regular season game. Like, we're talking regular season. It just feels like they're an 11 to 12 win team. I think they win the division. Do you have them in the playoffs?
I do not have them in the playoffs.
Wow. And that's, you'll hear us say this, at least 5 teams every year turnover for the playoffs. I have 6 that I have out and 6 new teams in, and there's almost always a worst to first, which we've already satisfied that requirement with the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll see if there are any others. So if you do not have the Buffalo Bills winning the division, then that means it's either the New York Jets or the Miami Dolphins. We will start with the Jets. Their over-under sits at 9.5 to make the playoffs. Yes is minus 103. No is minus 120. Plus 275 to win the division. Plus 1,000 to win the conference. Plus 2,500 to win the Super Bowl. Jimmy, do the Jets win more or fewer than 9.5 games?
I think the Jets are easily in the double digits. I've got them about 12 wins and winning the division. So I'm taking the over and winning the division.
Wow. I'm taking the under. I think this team's a circus. I think they're the quintessential mirror to the Browns. They're not really a mirror. They're like the same. They have all this talent, but it never seems to get together. I don't really trust the coach. I don't trust Nate Hackett, their offensive coordinator. I mean, really, I think their offensive talent is a little overrated. I think their defensive talent is a little underrated. I think the defense is good, but they're just like the Browns. They dominate bad teams in their own conference or in their own division that they see regularly. They can play really well, but they don't seem to always hold up against the best teams that they don't see all the time. I don't trust this team. I think it's a circus, and I'm really hoping they win like 7 or 8 games.
Yeah, I will not be upset if it doesn't work out. I just feel like Aaron Rodgers got one more run in him, and I think it's this year.
All right, that's fair. So I clearly have them out. You have them in, which would be another new team in and another new division winner. That leaves us with the Miami Dolphins, whose over-under also sits at 9.5. They are plus 200 to win the division. To make the playoffs, no is plus 125. Yes, minus 152. Division is plus 200, plus 1,000 for the conference, plus $2,000 for the Super Bowl. Jimmy, what do you have for the Dolphins this year?
So I think the Dolphins are going to go on a roller coaster based on their schedule. I have them at 10 wins. So I have them at 10 wins and making the playoffs. But I think there's one stretch. I think they may very well start the season 6-1 or 7-0, and then only grab a few more wins as the season goes on. But I like what they got. I like the pieces. I think they've got pretty good consistency. I think they're going to be okay.
This team is great early and fades late. That's what they've been as long as Tua has been the quarterback. I also think that's what we've seen from McDaniel for a year or two, but I think that trend will continue because I think he's a guy that comes up with all these great new wrinkles, and it really helps them early in the season. But once teams get tape and they figure out how to beat it, combine that with Tua not being super durable, and this team just seems to get tight against good teams. They're just not that good. They lost some guys. They lost some guys from last year on defense. I'm taking the under, man. I've got them out of the playoffs as well.
Wow. Yeah. You look at the end of their schedule. You've got the Packers, the Jets, the Texans, the 49ers, the Browns, and the Jets again.
Yeah.
That's
cold weather road games. Good luck.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough end of the schedule, but I think they're going to be able to stack enough wins to start that they're going to be able to squeak in.
Fair enough. A team that I wish good luck to right now is the New England Patriots. Their over-under sits at 4.5. I'm not going to bother with the rest of their bets because you don't need to make any of those bets. They have no left tackle. Jacoby Brissett is going to start at quarterback because their line is so bad they don't want to put their rookie behind there. The defense might be decent, but no offensive talent. This team's going to be terrible. I'm taking the under even at 4.5. Jimmy, what do you got for the Pats?
Yeah, so obviously they're not winning a game in their division.
I would be shocked if they did.
So they've got Seattle coming to Foxborough early. So that's an early cross country trip for Seattle. So I think maybe they get Seattle. Then you've got on the schedule winnable games. You've got the Jags, the Colts, the Titans, Bears, Cardinals, Chargers. I'm not sure if they're better than any of those teams. So I'm also taking the under.
Can I throw my 2 cents in on that? They're not.
Yeah, that's a bad team. It's bad all the way around. The only glimmer you may have, maybe you get a little bit of offensive success. They did bring in Alex Van Pelt as the offensive coordinator, so he should be comfortable with current Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, but that was just good enough to lose games.
Oh, I feel that way, as do you, not most Browns fans, but that's how we felt. But I think maybe that helps them maybe a little bit. But, yeah, I do not think this team can get to 5 wins.
All right, I don't want to talk about the Pats anymore. The team sucks. Let's move to the AFC South, where the upstart Houston Texans. I know we've always been kind of on the opposite of the Texans for a number of years now, where I always think they're going to be terrible and you think they're going to be good. And you got one last year, man. You were all over CJ Stroud being the beast that he would turn into. So kudos to you on that. This season, the win total for Houston currently sits at 9.5. To make the playoffs is yes minus 139, no is plus 115, 140 to win the division, plus 1,200 to win the conference. Kind of surprised to see their Super Bowl odds at plus 2,500 considering how much run they're getting. Jimmy, do you have the Texans winning more or fewer than 9.5 games?
Yeah, I think they get to 12, and it could be even more. I think I feel like CJ's going to lose in Lambeau. They'll probably lose to the Chiefs, and then you've got they always play weird games with the Cowboys, and I believe they go to Detroit, which that could be a tough game. But I think they get to at least 12. I have them as the 2 seed in the AFC. I think this team is on a roll. I'm not totally sold yet on how the Stephon Diggs thing is going to work out, but I'm going to trust Coach Ryans to get that figured out. So, yeah, I got the Texans shattering 9.5.
So I first saw this, it was 10.5, and that was maybe a month ago. And I liked them at 10, and I still like them at 10. They got a first-place schedule. The division's probably a little better. They do get games against KC, Baltimore, and Detroit as their 3 first-place games. That's rough. But they overall should be a good team. CJ was a beast, even if they have a little bit of a snag trying to get Diggs in there. I don't know how much he has left in the tank, I don't know how much of a pain in the ass he's going to be, but with the contract they gave him, they can ditch him if he becomes a pain in the ass. Yep. He can become a problem somewhere else. They just got to keep their guys healthy and keep their line healthy. But I like them to get to 10 wins. I think they win the division. You think they win the division. Let's move on to our next team, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are also at 9.5 for their over-under. Minus 139 not to make the playoffs, plus 115 to make the playoffs, plus 160 to win the division, plus 1,500 for the conference, plus 3,300 for the Super Bowl. Jimmy, where do you have the Jaguars finishing up this year?
Yeah, I think the implosion is inevitable. Some of the moves they've made I've liked, some of the moves they've made I haven't liked. I think Trevor Lawrence might be a guy that just never quite gets to where everybody thought he could get. I think they go under.
Yeah, this is a team that their over-under was 8.5 when I last saw it, and now it's 9.5, and I've gone from liking the over to liking the under. Yep. Man, could we see Doug Peterson fired in the middle of the season if it starts slow?
Yes.
The only thing that gives me pause is they get Armstead from San Francisco. That helps their defensive line. And as long as Lawrence has been healthy, they've been good. It's a question of is everything else in place around for this to work? Etienne continues to be really boom bust. We'll see how the kid they drafted from LSU, Thompson, we'll see how much of an impact he can make. It's like the vibes seem wrong with this team. They seem like they're going to fall off. I have them at 9 wins. So I actually have them as the last playoff team.
Wow.
With 9 wins. Yeah, I just can't quit the Jaguars apparently.
Hey, man. No, and I agree. If Lawrence is healthy and he can figure out how to use the pieces they have, they can get there. They can be okay. But
No,
I
that's
just
fair.
I don't trust it right now.
Yeah, that's totally fair. The next team we have is the Indianapolis Colts, who almost stole this division last year.
Yeah.
Their over under sits at 8.5, minus 200 to miss the playoffs, plus 163 to make the playoffs, plus 375 for the division. Conference and Super Bowl, they're long shots. Jimmy, what are the Colts going to do this year?
I don't believe in Anthony Richardson, so I have them going under 8.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have them an under out of the playoffs. They were fifth in sacks last year. So if they can get home, their defense can maybe be a problem, but their secondary is really bad and can easily be exploited. I just don't trust Richardson to stay healthy, and it seems like the word out of all the camp practices and stuff in the preseason was, oh, Richardson can't actually throw; he can just
Yep.
run, which I
Yep.
think is going to be a problem for him. So that
Yep.
brings us to the last team in the AFC South that we'll talk about, and that's the Tennessee Titans. Their over under now sits at 5.5, and wow, this is another one that's moved a full game. To make the playoffs, they're minus 715. To make the playoffs, they're plus 500. To miss the playoffs, they're minus 715. Jimmy, when this was 6.5, I had this as an easy under. I still think this is an under at 5.5. I think they only get to 5.
Yeah, I don't see how they go over. Will Levis, I mean, he has a chance, right? I mean, I think they actually have some weapons. They have an okay roster. They don't have a great roster. They don't have a horrible roster. They have an okay roster. Will Levis has a chance to prove he's an NFL starting quarterback. I don't think he is, so I think they go under.
He had a lower success rate than Kenny Pickett,
Yeah,
which is really bad because Kenny Pickett was terrible.
it's
Which
not the
means,
best.
what that really means is when he looked good or when they were winning games with Levis or staying in games, it was because they were hitting big plays. I think that's going to be something that defenses see. That's going to be what they're looking for. If we can limit him making big plays downfield, we can limit him as a quarterback. I think it's going to be a rough season for the Tennessee Titans. A team that supposedly had a rough season last year was the Kansas City Chiefs. And, it just ended with them winning the Super Bowl for the second time in a row and the third time in, 4 years?
Yeah,
They just keep on winning, man. And they got better in the offseason. Their over-under sits at 11.5. To make the playoffs is plus 400. To make the playoffs is minus 560. To miss is plus 400. They are minus 230 to win their division, plus 350 to win the conference, plus 700 to win the Super Bowl. Jimmy, will the Kansas City Chiefs win more or fewer than 11.5 games?
I look at their schedule. I could see possible losses to the 49ers, Bengals, Texans, maybe the Browns if they're playing really well. But I think they get to at least 13 wins. So I'm still taking the over. I think they're the 1 seed in the AFC.
I agree. Chris Jones is back. They lose Snead, but they still have so much young talent on defense. And they won 11 last year, and the offense really struggled because they didn't really have the pieces. They went out and got speedsters. I think they come out like a fire-breathing dragon. I think this team's going to win 13, 14 games, and that plus 350 for the conference feels like stealing, and the plus 700 for the Super Bowl feels like an easy bet to make.
Yeah, I am. I know he's been hampered by some lingering injuries, but I am so intrigued to see how Hollywood Brown plays with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to open up things with their deep passing game. It's going to make things easier for Kelsey and Pacheco up in the shorter game. Another team that has seen their over-under move a full game in the last month is the Los Angeles Chargers. Theirs now sits at 9.5, plus 250 to win the division. Long shots for the conference in the Super Bowl. To make the playoffs, minus 107. Missing the playoffs, minus 114. Jimmy, what do you expect from the Chargers this year?
So they've looked good in camp. They've looked good in the preseason. Looks like maybe they found a couple wide receivers. I mean, we've talked about it. We've said it for the last couple of years. Just getting Brandon Staley's craziness out of there of not actually understanding what fourth down analytics were, and bringing Harbaugh in is such an improvement. I think bringing Greg Roman in as your OC, along with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, if they're able to stay healthy, I think they were brilliant moves. I have the Chargers as my last playoff team in the AFC. I think they get to 10 wins.
When this was 8.5, I was an easy over. I'm still going to stick with the over because of everything you said. I think Jim Harbaugh is a good enough coach that they will just find ways to win some of these leagues. If you're a smart head coach and you have a good quarterback, those teams tend to win a lot of games. So I'm on board. I like them. I think they make the playoffs, and I think things are looking bright for the Chargers as long as people don't get hyped about them winning the division.
Yeah.
Next we'll do the Denver Broncos, whose over-under currently sits at 6.5. The plus 425 to make the playoffs, minus 590 to miss the playoffs. Jimmy, this is the second year going to be. Is this going to be a bad year for Sean Payton again?
Yeah, I mean, I actually bet the under at 5.5, so I'll certainly take the under at 6.5.
Yeah, I kind of want to take the over out of respect for Peyton because I think they're going to do a lot of dink and dunk, and that helped them win a lot of games last year, which would put them at the over. But I just can't do it. I don't think this team's very good, and I don't. Who do they have at quarterback? Jimmy, refresh my mind.
Bo Nix.
Oh yeah, Bo Nix. I don't trust Bo Nix. I don't trust rookie quarterbacks. I just think it's going to be a long season for that team, and I don't know. Maybe they get the post Russell bounce, not having him around, but I don't know, man. That just seems like they're in a bad spot.
Yeah, I think it's one of the worst rosters in the league. I don't think they're going to be very good. I think they're going to lose 4 games in division and probably split with the Raiders. So they're going to lose 5 games in their division. It's going to be bad, I think.
Speaking of the Las Vegas Raiders, their over-under sits at 6.5, minus 400 to miss the playoffs, plus 305 to make the playoffs. I have them as an under because outside of their D-line, the rest of this team is pretty awful. So I don't know what they're actually bringing into this season. They lose Josh Jacobs. They bring in Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Whoever's starting a quarterback just isn't good enough.
Yeah, I think it's just, Gardner Minshew is one of these guys who the couple times that he has been given an opportunity as a starter are the games that he's played very bad and his team has had to pull the plug immediately. It's been so bad. I don't think it's any different this time. I have the Raiders going under. I think it's going to be a train wreck. And it stinks because I wish I believed in Gardner Minshew because they have a ton of talent. But I refuse to believe in Gardner Minshew as a starter. Look, some guys in this league are meant to be backups, and that's okay. Sometimes you can have the Frank Reich playoff game and just, do amazing things, but that doesn't mean you're cut out to be a starter. I don't think Gardner Minshew is. I think the Raiders, it's going to be a long season.
There you go. And that is our AFC picks. Just to recap, I have Buffalo, Cincinnati, Houston, and Kansas City as your division winners, with the Chargers, the Jaguars, and am I missing a playoff team? Oh, Baltimore as my 3 playoff teams. Jimmy, who were your division winners and your playoff teams?
So I have Chiefs, Texans, Jets, Bengals winning the divisions, and I have the Browns, Dolphins, and Chargers as the 3 wild cards.
And who do you have as the conference champion?
I have the Chiefs as the conference champion.
I do too. They're better than everybody. They still are, and they got better.
Yeah.
And we now turn our attention to the NFC, and we'll start with the NFC East, where drama galore, because it always follows the Dallas Cowboys. They did sign CeeDee Lamb, but we'll see what happens with Minka and Dak. Right now, their over-under sits at 10.5, plus 110 to win the division, plus 750 to win the conference, plus 1,400 to win the Super Bowl, plus 210 to miss the playoffs, minus 265 to make the playoffs. Jimmy, what do you have happening this season for the Dallas Cowboys?
I think the Cowboys have a hard limit at about 9, so I'm taking the under, and I think they miss the playoffs.
I am exactly with you. I have them going under, and I have them missing the playoffs. I don't think their run game's good enough. I don't really trust Mike McCarthy, and I think that defense is good, but I think it can also be had. I think they're a 10-win team, and if they beat the Browns like I think the Cowboys are going to beat the Browns in the opener, I have a lot of worries for the Browns.
Yeah.
But that means so that leaves us our so we now go to the Philadelphia Eagles, who ended last season on one of the worst stretches of football you'll ever see a team play. They come into this year with Saquon Barkley added. They get Kellen Moore. They get Vic Fangio as their coordinators. Their over-under sits at 10.5, plus 135 to win the division, plus 900 to win the conference, plus 1,600 to win the Super Bowl. Making the playoffs is minus 225. Missing is plus 180. Jimmy, I have the Eagles going over. I have the Eagles winning the division. I think this team is actually going to be pretty good. I don't think they're going to be quite as good as they were 2 years ago, but I think they're going to be pretty close.
Yeah, I think Saquon is a big improvement as long as he's able to stay healthy. You still have probably the best wide receiver duo in the league, if not the best, one of the best. Even if Jalen Hurts isn't great, he's good enough to get this team to 12 wins and win the division.
Who do you want to talk about first, Jimmy? The Giants or the Commanders?
Well, let's talk about the Armada, because I think me and you are going to differ on this one.
Oh boy! All right, the Armada's over under sits at 6.5. They are minus 400 to miss the playoffs, plus 305 to make the playoffs. I don't think this team's going to be very good. Jaden Daniels is going to get the start, and I don't think he has enough help around him. I don't think Dan Quinn's all that great of a head coach, and I'm also skeptical of the defensive head coach with a brand new quarterback. So I think this team's going to be pretty bad again.
I think this team is going to win 8 or 9 football games. I'm taking the over.
Wow.
I love Austin Eckler with Jaden Daniels. I think Austin Eckler might have 1,000 touches this year.
I think he's going to play 4 games, so he better get a whole bunch of touches each game.
I think this team, I think Dan Quinn is going to be a grown-up in the room that they have sorely needed for a while. I think this team is going to...
I'll admit that. Quinn will be an adult.
Yeah, I think they're going to get to 8 or 9 wins.
Up next, we have the New York Giants, who are also at 6.5 for their over/under. They're minus 500 to miss the playoffs, plus 375 to make the playoffs. Jimmy, they lose Saquon to a cross-division team. Like Daniel Jones is terrible. This franchise seems like a mess. Like, how much like the Browns 10 years ago does this Giants team feel to you?
Yeah, it feels so much like that. I just want to say, like the Browns-Ravens, it's kind of like a weird rivalry because it feels forced, and the Browns-Bengals hasn't really been a thing since Bernie and Boomer, but like we know that Browns-Steelers feeling. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Like fans of any of the 3 major NFC East teams, like, they despise the other teams.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what it's like for a Giants fan knowing they're going to have to watch Saquon play for the Eagles.
He's going to put up like 250 and 5 touchdowns against them when they play.
It's going to be glorious. Yeah, they go under. I mean, we know they don't have a quarterback on their roster to make anybody.
You're not excited about when Daniel Jones gets benched, we get Drew Lock?
No. I'd rather see Tommy Cutlets get back in there. No, I think
they're going to be bad.
I think the Giants are one of the worst teams in the league.
Up next, we have the Detroit Lions, who were oh so close to beating the San Francisco 49ers, but their rookie running back fumbled right by just deep in their own territory, and that really turned that game. This year, they go at it again. Their over-under sits at 10.5. Minus 250 to make the playoffs, plus 200 to miss the playoffs. To win the division, they're plus 160, plus 600 to make the Super Bowl, plus 1,100 to win the Super Bowl. Jimmy, you were a doubter last year. Have you changed your stripes on this Detroit Lions football team?
So I will give the Detroit Lions front office credit for a couple things. They know they knew a few years ago their weakness was offensive line and the secondary, and they continue adding free agents and drafting at those 2 positions. I still don't think they're good enough in the secondary. I think they have one of the best offensive lines in the league.
I'm taking them on the over. I think they compete for the 1 seed.
You think they can go for the 1 seed?
Yeah, I think they're going to win 13 or 14 games. I think this is a really good team. I think they can score on anybody. And I think that defensive front is good enough to cause enough problems to really help them make up for a secondary that's not that great. Great stat for you here, Jimmy. Of the 17 games, how many are in domes for this team, do you think?
12?
14.
Yeah, I knew it was up there.
This is a completely different team when they play indoors as opposed to outdoors because Jared Goff is a very different quarterback when he plays indoors than outdoors. I just think with all the weapons they have, they're going to I think everybody is jumping all over Green Bay because they're the hot new thing. I think Detroit is still a really good football team, and I think they're still getting better because they have a lot of young guys that still have room to grow.
Yeah, but I still just think against elite teams, I'm going to continue to pick against a coach who doesn't know when to stop and a quarterback who has never had success of winning against elite teams. So, but I do agree with you. I think
that's fine, but we can talk about that in the playoffs with Detroit.
That's true.
This ain't the playoffs. We're talking the regular season.
Yeah, I have them. This
is another example. I think Detroit, and we talked about Dallas and some of these other teams like Miami are good examples of like the NBA. Like they can beat up on the teams that aren't as good as them, but when they play the other contenders, there's a noticeable difference. Although, like I said, they were right in that game against San Francisco, and I forgot there was that crazy Brandon Ayuk catch. And then you had the fumble. Like those 2 plays go the other way. They win that game in a walk.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the Green Bay. Oh, go ahead.
Those plays always go against the team Jared Goff's on, though. But
that is a very good point. If they don't fumble, I think we joked it was like if he hadn't fumbled, Jared Goff was probably going to throw a pick 6 on that possession.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mentioned the Green Bay Packers. They are a trendy pick for the next team up. Their over-under, though, sits at 9.5. To make the playoffs, they are minus 167. To miss the playoffs, plus 137. Plus 200 to win the division. Only plus 850 for the conference, which seems low, but then plus 2,500 to win the Super Bowl. Jimmy, how does this season play out for the Pack?
I am all in on Jordan Love. I think Josh Jacobs is going to be incredible. I think the wide receivers are there. They've grown a little bit. I got this team also winning 11 or 12, and I think they're going to be great. I think they'll be a wild card. I do think Detroit will be the winner of the division, so I think they'll be in as a wild card. But I really like this Packers team.
Yeah, I have the Packers making the playoffs. I do have Detroit winning the division. They've got a lot of young talent all over the place. You mentioned Josh Jacobs, who's really good. He'll really complement what they do with Jordan Love. And Matt LaFleur, man, all that dude does is run really good offenses and go to the playoffs. I want to doubt this team, but I just can't. I think they get to at least 10, even with their tough schedule.
Yep.
Another team that's getting a lot of run is the Chicago Bears after adding Caleb Williams, the young wide receiver Dunsey. They get Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift. This is a team that looked really good last year down the stretch. So I'm confused by their 8.5 over-under. To make the playoffs, they're minus 134. Or to make the playoffs, they're plus 110. To miss the playoffs, they're minus 134. To win the division, they're 400, plus 400. Jimmy, I have this team winning 9 or 10 games. What do you say?
Well, you say you're a little confused by that number, right?
Yeah.
Would you think the guys that make the numbers for the NFL teams are the same guys that make the numbers for the college football teams, like they watch a lot of college football too? I would think so. And I know I saw what Caleb Williams. I know I saw how Caleb Williams looked against NFL talent defense, and it wasn't all that good. Give me the under. Caleb Williams, bust.
Wow. Marking your flag. I think Caleb Williams will be pretty good. I don't think he's going to be what C.J. Stroud was last year, but all the pieces are there. The offense looks really good. Eberflus seems like a pretty good coach. I think he should at least compete for Offensive Rookie of the Year. A team that will not have a quarterback that they drafted compete for Offensive Rookie of the Year is the Minnesota Vikings because J.J. McCarthy is injured and he is done. And that means Sam Darnold will be starting for all of their games. Minnesota Vikings over under sits at 6.5. Minus 360 to miss the playoffs, plus 275 to make the playoffs. Jimmy, I have the only people who have talked about a good half of football more than the Browns and Deshaun Watson are the Sam Darnold believers who think that his decent showing against the Ravens in a blowout against San Francisco last year means something. I think this team's going to be bad, even though they have so much talent on at least on the offensive side of the ball. What do you think happens with this team?
Yeah, so many people are saying you don't have to worry about Justin Jefferson. He's still going to be great. He's quarterback proof. I don't think he's Sam Darnold proof. I have the Vikings going under.
I love that. We need to get that on a shirt. Sam Darnold proof.
Yeah, I don't even think Justin Jefferson can survive that. I think this team's going to be really bad. I think they're going to get beat up a lot. I think they're going to be probably one of the bottom 5 teams in the league this year.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them when they're just trying to throw 5-yard hitch routes, and there's just all the defenses there because they know Darnold can't throw anywhere downfield accurately. So I actually have the Bears also making the playoffs.
Wowzers!
So I have 3 teams in that division going to the playoffs because I think they're going to be good. Moving to the NFC South. The Atlanta Falcons have themselves 2 new quarterbacks, which was somewhat surprising. They also added Matthew Judon recently, which I think is going to help their defensive line a ton. Their over-under sits at 9.5. They are plus 210 to miss the playoffs, minus 265 to make the playoffs, plus 160 to win the division. Anything else, I think they're a long shot in terms of conference or Super Bowl. Jimmy, I think the Falcons are going to go over. I think they win this division. What say you?
Yeah, I also have them winning the division. I think it's going to be super close with them and the Buccaneers. But I think they upgraded the one place they had to upgrade, and at least in regular, non-primetime regular season games, their quarterback is going to make all those weapons look incredible. So, yeah, the Falcons go over and make the playoffs.
Up next, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their over-under has dropped a full game. It was 8.5. Now it sits at 7.5. To make the playoffs, no, minus 200. Yes, plus 163. Plus 220 to win the division. This was a team that came out of nowhere last year. We told you they were going to be better. I told you to put it was plus 1,000 for them to win the division. So all of you who listen to me, you are welcome. I hope you enjoyed that money. I hope you spent it on something worthwhile. Jimmy, what do the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do this season?
Yeah, I don't really understand. I really don't understand why this number dropped, but I still think they're going to get to 9 or 10 wins. I think they make the playoffs. This is an easy over for me.
I'm going the other way. I think they go. I liked the under at 8.5. I thought they'd get to 8. Now it's 7.5. I kind of like the over. I think they missed the playoffs, and I think the problem that they're going to have is I don't think they're as good as they were last year, and I don't think they were all that great last year. I think they get a little tougher schedule. I think we might see a little pullback from what Baker did last year, although Baker just throwing it to Mike Evans seemed to be very effective. So if that continues to work, I won't be surprised. Jimmy, now we come to my nemesis team.
Yeah, we got to talk about them.
The fucking New Orleans Saints, man. I said that they are a vision of the Browns' future where they can't really compete now because they have so much money built into teams that they already had a few years ago or will have in a few years. Their over-under sits at 7.5. They are minus 225 to miss the playoffs, plus 180 to make the playoffs. This seems super average, Jimmy, and it's Derek Carr. I don't know what to make of them. What do you think?
Yeah, I have them going under. I think there's talent. There's talent in spots. This is definitely not the pro Derek Carr podcast. If you've listened to us for any amount of time, you would know that. I don't think getting Derek Carr helps. I still think the best thing they can do is put Taysom Hill at quarterback and just wildcat the shit out of it with Alvin Kamara. But I have them going under.
Their schedule is so easy. It really is pretty easy. I could see them get to 8. I could also see them suffer through a 5-win season. I hate this team. I hate betting on them. I'm just going to take the under and just try to forget they exist.
please, everybody, if we've got new listeners out there, you got to listen to the Picks Pod, even if you're not a big Browns person. You got to listen to the Picks Pods just to hear Evan waffle on what to do with the Saints. It's great.
Complain about the fucking Saints every week.
It's incredible.
Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers, who, I mean, it couldn't have gone worse for them last year with Bryce Young being terrible and them firing their coach very early, and then also getting to be the worst team in the league and watching another team in your conference draft the quarterback that you were hoping to get. But such is life for the Carolina Panthers. They're over-under. Wow. Their over-under currently sits at 5.5. Sorry, I misread something. I saw it open. It over-under was 1, and I was like, wait, that can't be right.
Yeah.
Their over-under sits at 5.5. They're minus 700 to miss the playoffs, plus 650 to make the playoffs. Jimmy, this team wasn't just bad last year. They scored 236 points in a 17-game season, but don't just blame the offense because they gave up 416. For those of you without a calculator, they were outscored by more than 10 points a game. This team's going under. They suck. Khan has a lot of money, but they're an embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean they've added.
They sold it, didn't they? Khan sold the team to that other crazy bastard.
Yeah, they've added a few pieces. They've added a few pieces on offense. Defense last year they had some injuries. They also gave away some of their best pieces. There are some people trying to fool you and believing that Bryce Young is getting better. He's not going to get better.
I mean, I know Dave Canales worked wonders with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, but those guys were at least had pro-level talent. I just don't see it with Bryce Young.
Yeah, the Panthers go under. There's just no other way around it.
Okay. One last division to go. It's the NFC West. We start with the San Francisco 49ers, who have really been the big dog in this conference for a while. They're coming off a Super Bowl loss. Their over-under sits at 11.5 to make the playoffs, minus 500 to miss, plus 375. Winning the division, they're minus 250. Conference, they're plus 240. Super Bowl, they're plus 550. They currently sit as the favorites to win the Super Bowl. Jimmy, what say you about this San Francisco 49ers team now that they have Brandon Ayuk back? We'll see what happens with Trent Williams.
I think the 49ers are going to play in another NFC Championship game this year. I think they get to 11 or 12, and they're the 1 seed in the West, just eking out the Eagles. I think the 49ers are a great football team. They've got a great coach, great front office. I just think they're missing an elite-level quarterback to win the big game. But I do not think they're going back to the Super Bowl. I actually think the Packers are going to make the run in the NFC this year.
Wow.
But I do think the 49ers get the 1 seed and win the division.
I think they win the division. I think they get to 12 or 13 wins. They just seem to beat up on teams. They just really do. They have so many weapons, so much firepower. Keep an eye on McCaffrey's calf strain. If that tends to go south, then I would look even more at the LA Rams to win this division, because if he misses considerable amount of time, Brock Purdy starts to look like Jimmy Garoppolo with the Raiders, not Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers.
Yep.
But other than injury, this team's going to be good. I have them definitely competing. We'll get to who I have going to the Super Bowl in the NFC soon. But first, let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams. Their over-under sits at 9.5. To make the playoffs, yes is plus 103. No, minus 125. To win the division, plus 400. And Jimmy, this is a team that very recently was at 8.5 wins. I was all over the over at 8.5. I still like the over at 9.5. I think this team's going to be really good. What do you think?
Yeah, I do too. I think if the offensive line can keep Matt Stafford standing up, he's got weapons all over the field. I like Kyren Williams. Part of me likes that Kyren Williams gets hurt, because I think Blake Corum could be just incredible right out of the gate in a Sean McVay offensive scheme style. I also have the Rams. I have them getting to at least 10. They'll make the playoffs. I think the Rams are going to be very good this year.
Yes, I have them in the playoffs as well. Next up, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Over-under sits at 7.5. minus 286 to miss the playoffs, plus 225 to make the playoffs. Jimmy, this is a team that I think is going to be better than people think. I am taking the over. I think they make the playoffs. God help me, I'm betting on Geno Smith.
I don't have them in the playoffs, but I am taking the over.
I think the schedule, I think 8's kind of their floor based on their schedule.
Yeah.
I think that defense will be better with McDonald over there from Baltimore. He seems to get just the absolute most out of his defensive talent. And just like DK Metcalf, man, Tyler Lockett, those guys are beasts. They make Geno Smith look really good. Okay, they make Geno Smith look like a passable starting quarterback in the NFL.
There you go.
A guy I don't think is a passable starting quarterback in the NFL is Kyler Murray, who leads the Arizona Cardinals. Their over-under sits at 6.5, minus 400 to miss the playoffs, plus 305 to make the playoffs. Jimmy, people are talking this team up left and right, like they didn't go 3-5 after Kyler Murray came back and played, I guess, fairly well. I know they bring in Marvin Harrison. I think this team's going to be bad. They could, their first 6 games are brutal. They could start the season 1-5 and be lucky and consider themselves lucky.
Yeah, I think their schedule just to start is really rough. I think they go under because I'm on the same page with you with Kyler, and it stinks for their team, for their fans, because I think they've actually built a pretty good team surrounding around expectations of Kyler Murray that I don't think he can get to.
Oh, wait, I'm wrong. I messed up. I have the Rams in the playoffs. Seattle I have out of the playoffs. My apologies. Gotcha. I messed that up because I was looking at who are we doing next? Like, all right, who did we have? And I'm like, I have Philly, and I have Detroit, Atlanta, and San Francisco. And then I have the Rams, the Bears, and the Packers making the playoffs. Who do you have, Jimmy, just to wrap up there?
So I have the 49ers, Eagles, Lions, and Falcons as the division winners. The Packers, the Buccaneers, and the Rams is wild cards. And I honestly believe all 3 wild card teams are going to win on wild card weekend in the NFC.
Wow, that would be crazy. Beating Atlanta, okay, I can definitely see that happen. And if one of these teams is really good, I could definitely see Detroit or Philadelphia falling.
Yep, I feel it. That's how it's going to go. But yeah, I have the Packers. I actually think the Packers are going to go to the Super Bowl this year.
I have a rematch. I'm being boring. I like Kansas City. I like San Francisco. I just think they're ahead above everybody else. I'm just not there yet with Green Bay. Just not. But we'll see. They look like a team ready to maybe take the next step. But as we often see, it doesn't always happen like we think.
Yeah.
I've told our listeners for a while now not to bet any of the like MVP, most comeback player of the year. I just think the voting's too erratic. I think they get too caught up in narrative instead of picking who best deserves the award. So who would you recommend our listeners bet on if they're going to do that for like MVP?
I think if you feel the need to do it, the only 2 players I would bet right now for MVP are Patrick Mahomes and Jordan Love. I think with weapons, Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to throw the football more again this year, and I think that people will remember just how good Patrick Mahomes is. But I think Jordan Love is going to have a sensational season. I think he's going to provide some upsets against some NFC powerhouses. So those would be the only 2 places I would go. I fully agree with you. Betting those awards, it's so difficult.
I think Jordan Love's a good suggestion because the odds will be good, but also like the biggest problem that we have with Mahomes is like voters just get fatigued. Oh, we don't want to always vote for the same guy, which is how Lamar now has 2 MVPs that he maybe does or doesn't deserve. I don't know. Yeah. But when we see what we see in the playoffs with Lamar Jackson, it really makes those MVPs feel hollow.
Now, I will tell you, listeners. So if you really feel like you want to bet on the MVPs, things like that, we're usually pretty good at getting dialed into the narratives as the season goes on. So we'll keep you updated with that. The place, like I I think you can kind of steal some money right now at FanDuel. You can make parlays. They've got a pretty good parlay builder for teams to make the playoffs. And you can pretty much bet the can't miss playoff teams and make $30 to $60, $70 depending on what you put in, whatever. But you can actually get pretty good odds just betting like Chiefs, Eagles, 49ers, Lions, like the teams
Falcons,
that we
yeah.
the teams that we really feel are going to make the playoffs. You can build that parlay, and you can really kind of set yourself up to have some free money kind of at the end of the regular season to help with those playoff bets.
Yeah, I'm all about the parlays. I made it work with Flacco last year. We'll see if we get to do it again this year. We can bring the Flacco parlay back if he ends up playing. That'd be fun.
There are teams that might have to make that call.
That would just be hilarious.
Don't let Flacco end up there in Minnesota.
Oh man, he'll just be oh man, that team would actually instantly be pretty good. Well, with with JJ and Addison, like that team has some receiver talent, and they're the type of guys that you just chuck it up and let them go get it. Like that can win you football games.
Yeah, you'd definitely be able to bet the Justin Jefferson over on targets every week.
All right, well that's it. Our over-unders podcast. We're usually pretty good at this. Over the last 4 years, this is the 5th year that we've done it because I have 4 years of record. I went 21-9-2, 16-15-1, 19-12-1, and 18-14. So even my worst season, I still came out a little bit ahead. And I know you're generally over 500 on these too.
Yep. It's a good way. I mean, it's something we talk about, and the numbers kind of got skewed a little. The numbers changed a little bit this year. Makes me think some of the sharps are peeping our podcast, but there are just spots where the over-unders, they just can't get them high enough. Yeah, I think they're just
agreed.
I think to me, they're just some absolute steals out there, over-wise and under-wise, that you can kind of set yourself up for what I think is free money at the end of the year.
All right. Well, that does it. Jimmy, that's all 32 teams. We did it.
Yeah, you know what? It's almost time. It's good to get this in and get ready for the start of the season next week.
Yeah, and we'll be up next with our week 1 picks. That'll come later this week, probably over the weekend. And check out our Browns podcast if you have not. There will be a link in the description below. Jimmy, thank you for joining me and doing our yearly tour of the NFL.
No place I'd rather be, brother.
And I would like to thank all of you for listening. For Jimmy Champ, I am Evan Belfiore, and we're excited for another season of No Broken Legs.